Hello everyone, how are you? Sally watching from Square One, and welcome to another episode of Living a Fulfilled Life and Career. I'm so very excited to be sharing with you this very episode of someone who feels like I've known for ages. She thinks like me, she's done a lot of things like I've done, traveled to so many countries, have different citizenships, started her career from scratch about 5 times, and she's a remarkable human that I would love you to meet. Itiah Thomas is now working through an incredible legacy for her life to really help others do the same, change countries, find meaning, and really set up your new life somewhere else. And so I would love to welcome today to this episode Itiah Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. I don't even remember how we met. I think it was actually on LinkedIn at the time that you was actually transitioning into UX design. And I think your path is extraordinary and how you move from the US and then you're now in Australia. And I believe you travel to so many places, and tourism has a very soft spot in your heart. And now you're helping others to really make that big leap. So thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me. And yeah, just I'm totally looking forward to our conversation today.
So just to get started, just tell maybe just tell us a little bit about you, where you're from originally, and how are you now in Australia?
Yes. So from the States originally. I've lived in 5 states. I started off in New York, most of the Eastern Seaboard, and then moved over to California in San Francisco before I left the States. And when I left the States, I did not know what country I was going to move to. I just know that I no longer wanted to live there. So I went on a sabbatical. I took some time off of work and traveled for 8 months and went to like, I don't know, at least 4 continents during that trip between Europe and Asia and then down here and ending up basically down to Australia. And it was just, yeah, it's just such a liberating trip because, like I said, I packed up and went on a long-term, travel and to see where I could potentially live next. Australia was on my radar, but I wasn't like definitely sure if the feeling that I felt when I went to visit about 3 years or 2 years prior to me moving, if that was just, me falling in love with Sydney or if I actually, felt that connection with it to want to move and be here long term. So I went on a bit of a tour, figured out that, yep, Sydney was definitely it for me. And I moved there and now I live in Brisbane. And it's been 5 years since I've been in Australia. And I am one swearing ceremony away from being a dual US Australian citizen.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. And so you first came to Australia to check it out. And then 2 years later or so, you then move here, I guess, for the time being.
Yeah.
What was your career before you, I guess, when you landed in Australia? Did you have a different career to UX design?
Yeah, sure. So I started out in commercial construction project management. And so I was doing that in the States, building hospitals and data centers and offices, biopharmaceutical plants. So I was doing that for about 7 to 8 years or so while I was in the States, in several of the states. While I was there in California, basically, and in DC. And so when I came over, like, I actually thought that maybe this is an opportunity by moving to Australia as well, that this would be an opportunity to start anew in a career setting as well. And then I came over and it was like I started my own company initially for the first 6 months that I lived here. And then I was like, oh, well, it doesn't look like I'll be able to stay in Australia by trying to self-sponsor and whatnot. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get back into construction industry. It's easiest to get my permanent residency, as well as like I wanted to also try working from the owner's rep side of things. So I did not come over here with a job, but I did start applying for jobs basically still back in construction, but on the other side of the coin instead of being on the general contractor, main contractor side, because that is the thing I hadn't explored yet while living in the States. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll give it another go. in construction by, saying that I can at least say I've done it in different countries, I've built different things, I've been on different sides of the coin before I like completely walk away from it. So yeah, I did that initially for 2 years before I was just like, yeah, it's still not doing it for me. And then just like in the same way that I went on a quest to figure out what country I wanted to move to, I went on that quest to figure out what career I wanted to change into.
Right. And I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? How can we find that new career? How can we take that leap and that quest? How can you tell me a little bit more about how did you study that quest? What was useful and maybe a practical way for you to figure out, well, it is UX design. That is the next thing, because there's so many options in front of us, and I think it could be quite overwhelming when something isn't quite right, you're not as fulfilled as you normally are in your Monday to Friday, and you're like, okay, something's got to change. But then how do you know what is that thing? How did you work it out?
Sure. So for me, I knew that there were some things that I definitely wanted and didn't want in whatever it is that I was doing next. And so for me, it was really important to take a step back and figure out like what would a aligned and fulfilled life look like for me and in general, and then how would my career be able to fit inside of that to help make that dream come true. And so I guess for me, then I basically was like, okay, well, I know I wanted to be in an industry whereby I had some flexibility to be able to work remotely or some ability to travel more with it. And so, whereas with construction, I was quite well pinned to the job site, and I am a traveler. So that became really important to me to be able to have a lifestyle that supported that and a career that supported that, at least was aligned with it. And then I knew that I wanted to be in something that was innovative. And so for me, there was things like I just kept hitting against a wall with construction that people didn't necessarily always want to like try new things. And the industry wasn't like, moving in leaps and bounds in the same way that like technology was, for instance. And so there was always something new in technology, and that made me really excited. So that's how I started to even kind of put technology as in like a wide industry on my radar to be in that space. And so I also looked back as to something that I wouldn't have to go to school for like a really long period of time in order to do that transition. And so I started to see that there were boot camps, and I didn't necessarily need to go back for like a full 4-year degree, for instance. And so when I started kind of taking that in line, then I was like, okay, well, what skills and strengths do I have that I still want to be able to use in my new industry? And so it's like, all right, I still enjoy working with people and keeping projects moving and getting people on the same page about things and drawing things out from people, asking questions, right? So then once I started to get clear on those things, I was like, okay, well, like what allows me to be able to do that? And so it was about the same time, and I feel like there was like like I said, the universe was conspiring, that I started getting emails from General Assembly. And so that's a school that that enables, or I guess teaches people who want to move into construction, into technology, how to basically shift into it from their other career that they've had in the past. And so I was like, and so what was actually happening was that there were things about like find work you love that they were putting in. So it wasn't even like necessarily tech related stuff. And I was like, that sounds like it's a great topic. Like I'm going to start going to those things. So I just started going to workshops that really started to explore that. And then lo and behold, like General Assembly, timing wise, was amazing because they decided to then start having opening houses about all of the things that they can do in the tech industry that they taught. So I just started going to the open houses and workshops, and kind of one day little workshops to just at least start experiencing all of the different things that they had available that they taught. And I tried coding. I did it for one day and it was like, it's not for me. I don't need to be behind a screen. Like, yes, it allows me to check some boxes and that I can do it remotely, but I just needed that people interaction in a bit deeper way than I was able to get from coding. I tried social digital marketing. Digital marketing. And I was just like, I don't think I could be in social media all day, every day, or in that way, or just in marketing. I'm saying that that's all that they do, but that was a large part of it. And I was like, well, that's not as exciting to me. And then it's basically about like a process of elimination of going through all of like the courses they had available. I went to UX design and I was like, oh, well, that seems like that's a lot of the things that I still enjoyed from project management, but also people seemed really happy to do it. Like people, like everyone was just, it was like a community of everyone being like, oh, just, ask me anything. Like people were just really open in that space and seemed to really be genuinely enjoying their job. And I was like, well, that was completely opposite of where it came from, that people were just genuinely enjoying what they're doing. And there was just such an open community of designers that were just willing to help each other and have a chat. And so I found that to be really unique. And so, yeah, I was just like, well, let's explore this a bit more, and then ended up taking a boot camp for 3 months to as part of my transition.
Right. And where did that, so now how long ago was that?
So I transitioned so the course was February 2019 through a May 2019. And then, so that was in Sydney. So I was building a network in Sydney and taking it in Sydney. And then I was just like, once I finished, I was like, I like Sydney, but there isn't a reason that I need to particularly stay here. My boyfriend's living up in the Brisbane area. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a go to try to find my job full time, like up in Brisbane. But because this program wasn't available in Brisbane, it was only available in person in Sydney. Now it's online. But at that time it wasn't only in person. So I just had to create a new network in Brisbane again, after I started to create a network in Sydney. So it took me probably about, after moving up to Brisbane it was like so I moved in like July of 2019. And I got my first role in October of 2019. So I'd say like I moved at end of July. So August and September were like hardcore. Finding a job was my job. Like a lot of coffee chats, a lot of just getting to know the market up here in Brisbane. And so I was able to, once I actually was able to put that pedal to the metal.
Someone put us.
Peter Laurie. I went to a talk and he was like, oh, you know what, you should really reach out to Ali, because I was like, I want to talk to people who do UX design, but not just about the UI, like the user interface and just the design. I want to talk to people who like that there is more, more involved to that, and is interested really in how that impacts people's lives. And he's like, Ali, you need to talk to Ali. And I was like, perfect. And I reached out to you directly. I'm all about being proactive and following up on, and people give you a contact. And then lo and behold, like look what that's turned into. So
and we are chatting. So I want to ask you, because I know that you've been working in UX for, I guess, close to 2 years now, a year and a half or so. And you have also pivoted your life into adding a little bit of your very own passion of pivoting, changing your life, starting from scratch, and really combining that into helping others. And I would love you to tell me what is that? What does that look like? And how are you helping other people figure out how can they move into a different career or move to another country? What are the things you're helping them with?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, it's like after having done these leaps multiple times, and for me, I consider the leaps that I've done in my career and in moving countries as acts of self-care, because it had gotten to a point in both from where I was living and in my career that, so career-wise, the money and the stress and the title were no longer worth it. In being in the States, I just felt like I was moving around state to state and still didn't feel a sense of home. So for me, they were a bit inextricably linked, of kind of one opportunity beget the other. So because I was in construction and had that background, I was able to come to Australia, and that was something that was needed here as a skilled migrant. So like kind of one thing I said informed the other. so to speak. And so, yeah, I guess I just really was looking back in 2020 and noticing in the Facebook groups I was in, the communities I was in, people were really unhappy with either what was happening in their countries, particularly the US, either with how things were going with coronavirus, how things are going with politics, and we're like clamoring to get out. But then I also noticed that people also weren't as happy in their jobs, or they were losing their jobs with COVID or what have you, or they were finding out that their jobs were not either like, recession proof or in that jazz. So there was just a lot of flex that I was noticing in both of those realms. And even with people who wanted to move abroad, they still were not necessarily had the finances and knew what they wanted to do or be in a job that could support their lives abroad. So I guess in that time where I was noticing that, it's like, okay, well, maybe initially I wanted to kind of create a course that helps people to move abroad or travel long term, because there's quite a bit that's involved in getting your life ready in a state on both the country you live in and then the country you're going to land in if you're just moving abroad. But if you're traveling long term, you have to be prepared to be able to move about multiple times. Then, like I said, I noticed that with COVID putting people a little uneasy about leaving or moving to a new place, and they said them not really quite having a job or finances in a career to really support that. I was like, okay, well, maybe the 101 course ahead of that is to help people change their career or their jobs. And it's like, I have experience doing both in both realms quite a bit. And I've lived in 3 countries, lived in Japan and the States, and now in Australia. And career-wise, I've had 13 jobs over my life. I've had them in 2 countries. I'm now in my 3rd career in terms of entrepreneurship as well. And so I was like, well, I felt like I was able to step into that space to help people who were like raging as to like, what do I do? What is the guidance, or looking for guidance, looking for a roadmap for someone who's done it before, to be able to move both in those spaces of changing their country and changing their career. So yeah, I offer group coaching programs and one-on-one options to help people to complete their leap into their new job or career. Is one program, which is the career upgrade program, and then which is open for enrollment now. And then the other program is the country upgrade, whereby it's helping people prepare for their move abroad. So I'm all about helping people confidently complete their changes.
Yeah, and just I'm so curious because I know we talked about this I think a few weeks ago, and I was like, how can people move abroad with COVID? And you said, and you gave me a great answer. Can you tell me about how can people plan, those trips that, maybe once in a lifetime they're going to do. I lived in London for what I thought was going to be 6 months, and I ended up there for almost 7 years. And because of COVID, there is not as easy. So how can people, maybe a couple of tips on how can people just kick off that decision to live abroad even though COVID is happening?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One, imagine that if you're like most people, you need a bit of time and to be able to get your life together. You may not exactly be moving like particularly next month. So if well and truly time is on your side in that you have a bit of time to move out, I'd say that there's several things that you would need to do even before you get to that moment. For me, it was about if you try to think about like, what is it that you want from your move? Because some people, I'd say, moving to get away from something. Other people are moving to get towards a lifestyle that they wanted. So I'd say before even trying to pick a country and try to figure out just the logistics of that, I'd say maybe start with, what is the kind of experience that you're wanting to have in your new home and or a new place that you're going to kind of start to bounce around with traveling long term. Because getting more clear on that, you may come to find out that maybe the place that you want to move to isn't as impacted by COVID, or is someplace that that you just don't want to move abroad and still be in and not thrive, I guess, because you can do that at home. so yeah, I guess I'd say first about I have like kind of a free guide of to helping people with the questions and start to consider to help figure out what kind of country is best aligned with with the lifestyle that they want to live. Next is finances. So really, if you're some people feel that they need to have a job in order to move, like beforehand. That actually hasn't been my case. I didn't have a job, like I said, when I moved to Australia. However, I did have finances. I had savings. And so a way to be able to hedge, what you might experience either by not having a job at first or what you might experience by stepping to a place where COVID is still very much a thing in terms of cramping the lifestyle a little bit is having some funds available. For me, I definitely plan for 6 months to 1 year, but that's just my planning mindset. But I think at least if you're having something that covers you at least for 3 months at the time, because you may not be sure. And that's even if you do have a job lined up. I'd say because you just don't know exactly what incidentals come about, what extra expenses come about to just try to, get yourself set up. And then I also say that there's ways to make connections with communities even before you go abroad. And so whether that be through Facebook groups that are particularly about or for people who live in that country or wanting to move to that country, whether that is some of the jobs that you're looking into when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn to have information interviews and whatnot are particularly in the country that you are wanting to move to. So there are ways to definitely start to make connections with people who are already living in places that you want to live, so that you also come with you already have a network that you're building even from your home country. And then, like I said, you can move to places short term to see how you like them first. You may not necessarily need to completely uproot your whole life first. So you may go and just try your hand at it for a little bit. Some people are doing student visas, going over and student visas, as a way to be able to get over to their country initially. And in those cases, of course, then there's some limitations of not being able to work. But if you have your finances set up in that way, that you're not necessarily needing to rely on the local economy in that initial part of your time in the country, then that can help to take the burden off of it as well. There are some countries in particular that are very much looking for people to come over and live, and they're doing special visas and whatnot for people to be able to come over for those periods of time. So I guess it's not all is not lost, but I would just definitely be aware of whatever restrictions is in the country that you're moving to, particularly if they've been harder hit with COVID, and to understand what the entry requirements are, especially with testing or being able to have to be quarantined in some way beforehand. So be aware. But I also am I was also, before I went, I was aware of what all my visa options would be. So I didn't just move over thinking oh, I can definitely do this and it'll be great. It actually wasn't until my third attempt at my permanent residency did I land in being successful at it in terms of how I thought I'd be able to stay in the country. So just being also aware of your multiple options, so that you don't end up landing back at home prematurely.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, immigration paperwork is never fun. I've been there too many times. Yeah, just before we wrap up, where can people find you?
Yes. So there's my business Facebook page is Leaping for Change. And there's also a private group called Leaping for Change as well. And I also have my handles on all of the social media is at Itiah Thomas. So one word, at Itiah Thomas. So that's on Clubhouse, on Twitter, on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my name. Facebook, I'm the only person with my name. So it's really helpful. So there's no dearth of places to be able to find me in the digital world.
That's awesome. Oh, and I can't wait to see what you're going to put in Clubhouse. I know you've been joining a few groups there, and it's been quite an interesting new social media platform with so much potential, and already so many people taking advantage of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully we can do something together there as well. So that will be super fun. And Itiah, thank you so much for joining me today. I really love getting to know more about your story, and especially the fact that, as you said, I think trying things, and even if it's moving to a new country, just try it out, experiment with it. And I think that's a mindset that I wish a lot of people could have, and be quite open to be curious and play with that ambiguity and be comfortable in trying things and maybe failing at it, because that's what's going to make us then find the next best thing. So thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ellie. And look, I look forward, like I said, to helping people with either of the programs. Like I said, Career Upgrade is what I'm taking enrollment for right now. People. So hopefully that is something that if people jump into, and I can help with leaps into new job or career.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I'll chat to you very soon. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you're looking at moving to another country, changing careers, or actually continuing your career but setting up your network from scratch, Itiah will be able to help you. Follow her all over socials, or even sign up for her course. It really be remarkable what she can teach you, and all the planning that it's going to take before COVID actually ends or changes, for you to be prepared for this amazing milestone in your life. Remember, life happens for a reason. Trust the process. You are the light needed right here and right now. Thank you so much. I'm Ali Whitecheck. I'll chat to you very soon. Bye.